Hey, how's it going, friends? Thank you for tuning in to VR Revelations. Welcome. Please make sure to give this video a like and make sure you subscribe for future coverage. So it is March 28th, the year of our Lord 2023, and I have another quick video here on the situation in Bakhmut. So looks like the Russian forces do continue to advance, as we will be seeing here on some maps, pro-Ukrainian maps at that. We recently saw reports that the Russians took control of the Azov metal factory inside of the city, which is, a large area, and they are growing closer to completely encircling the Ukrainian forces in the center of the city. Again, the pocket has grown a lot smaller. And let's actually go ahead and take a look here. First, let's go ahead and take a look at this live UA map, which is pro-Ukrainian here. So this isn't Russian propaganda. These are the Ukrainians themselves that are making this analysis. Now, we saw a couple of weeks ago or months ago that the Russians were on the outskirts of the city. They were pushing in from the south and, of course, from the north. And we can see that the situation is a lot worse now for the Ukrainian forces. We see that from the south of the center of Bakhmut here, the Russian forces are actually pretty close here to making an encirclement, essentially. And again, the only reason that the Ukrainian forces have been holding so long is because Zelensky has doubled down on his resistance, and a lot of soldiers have been killed in the city. Yes, Russian soldiers have also died in the city, but Zelensky continues to pump, wave after wave of soldiers, because he made statements, a couple of weeks ago or months ago, saying that Bakhmut would not fall, that it was an impenetrable fortress. If you remember, last year in December, he visited Bakhmut right before going to the United States. And so Zelensky has been making a big deal about, Bakhmut, about holding the city. And he's explained in multiple interviews why it's important, how it's a transport hub, right? And essentially how it will allow the Russians to deploy their forces into other nearby cities, through the roads connecting Bakhmut to these other cities, such as Kramatorsk up here and Slavyansk, which we can see the Russian forces are already on their way over to. And so, contrary to what the United States has been advising Zelensky, telling him to pull out and to save his forces for a future battle, Zelensky has pretty much doubled down, and so that's why the situation there in Bakhmut has become known as a meat grinder, because soldiers are sent there to die. But we can see here that it's clearly going to collapse. Now, we have two narratives, much like we saw in the Battle of Vuhledar to the north of Bakhmut, or rather Soledar, right up here. Now, if you remember a couple of months ago, this was the main topic here around the world, the battle that took place in Soledar. Again, you can see Bakhmut is down here to the south. Soledar is right here. And now this was a salt mine city. It was pretty heavily defended by the Ukrainians. And right before the Russians took complete control, we saw counter propaganda coming out of the West saying that the Ukrainians were fighting back, that the situation was under control, that the Russians did not, in fact, have control of Soledar. And they actually continued to deny the Russian victory there for a couple of weeks until it was pretty much undeniable. Of course, we know that was all propaganda, and they were pretty much trying to hide the ugly truth or the failure there as long as they could. And then when they finally revealed that the Russians did have control of it, they suppressed the news, right? They forgot about it. They tried to make it out to seem like it wasn't a big deal. But we can clearly see, guys, that Soledar is fully under Russian control. As a matter of fact, They are now quite beyond that city and are seeking to advance here to Slavyansk and Kramatorsk. But the same thing is now happening with Bakhmut. If you go right now on Google, you have all these Western sources saying that the situation has stalled there. The Ukrainian army just came out and said that the situation is stabilized. But I don't know how they can say that when you have these pro-Ukrainian maps literally showing us day by day the Russians collapsing in on the city and creating this, what I call this pit of death, where Zelensky continues to pump his soldiers into their death. Let's go ahead and take at this other clear map here. As you can see, guys, the situation is hopeless. There was rumors of an offensive here on the city. There isn't going to be no offensive, guys, that is going to liberate Bakhmut. The soldiers inside of this city are pretty much done for if they don't get out now. Bakhmut is about to collapse. This is going to be a huge, huge news, a major victory for the Russians and a major blunder for Zelensky, who decided to double down and pump thousands of soldiers into the city, sending them to their deaths. And again, Zelensky has warned of the consequences of losing Bakhmut, and he's right in that analysis that once Bakhmut falls, the Russians are going to be able to advance throughout this whole territory here, through all these towns, like a hot knife through butter, and they will go for Slavyansk and Kramatorsk, guys. And those will be two major objectives here on this Russian special military operation. And again, it's going to be interesting after that, guys, because that's not going to end the war. Ukraine has already stated, and the West, that they're not going to stop until they take back all the territory that Russia has gained, which in this case would be all this red here, guys, which is now legally part of Russia. So that's impossible. We're talking about a World War III. So personally, what I think is that Russia has already come to the conclusion that they're going to have to attack Kyiv, the command center where Zelensky is, and I believe we will see that once we see the Russian army take over Slavyansk and Kramatorsk. But anyways, let's go ahead and read this article here by Reuters. Again, this is a Western news source, so their reporting usually sheds a positive light on Ukraine. But again, we're going to be reading, the Ukrainians are saying the situation is stabilized, which probably means it's completely out of their control. Again, it says here, Russian forces are still edging forward in the bombed-out eastern Ukrainian city of Bakhmut. A Moscow-installed official said on Tuesday, but British intelligence said a Russian tank division had taken heavy losses in the nearby town of Avdiivka, another town there where ferocious battles are being fought. I covered that a couple of videos ago. The battle for Bakhmut, a mining city in the Donetsk region, has been the focus of Moscow's war in Ukraine for months, with both sides describing the fighting there as a meat grinder. Denis Pushilin, the Russian installed leader of the part of the Donetsk region under Moscow's control, said most Ukrainian forces had pulled back from the Azom metal factory on the western side of the Bakhmuta River in the city. The important thing here was to clear out the industrial zone at the plant itself. You can practically say that has now been done, with the guys just finishing off Ukrainian fighters there who are only left in solitary groups, Pushilin told Russian state TV. His claims ran counter, so here's the Ukrainian propaganda, and Western assertions that the situation in Bakhmut is stabilizing and that Russia's winter offensive is faltering. Again, guys, this is the same type of propaganda that we saw in Soledar right before Russia's complete takeover. This is the type of reporting that we were seeing. So it probably means that the Russians are close to taking the city. And as we can clearly see by these maps, that's pretty obvious, guys. I mean, look at this. You can't tell me this is Ukraine stabilizing the situation, right? It's absolutely absurd. In its evening briefing note on Tuesday, Ukraine's military command said Russia continued to conduct assaults in Bakhmut, but Ukrainian forces were standing firm and repelling attacks. Ukraine's Eastern Command spokesman Zurhiv Zharavati separately said the situation around Bakhmut remained dynamic. Ukrainian military commanders have said their own counteroffensive backed by newly delivered Western hardware, including German Leopard 2 tanks, is not far off, but have stressed the importance of holding Bakhmut in the meantime. Russian forces have also been shelling Avdiivka, 90 kilometers, 55 miles south of Bakhmut. Many civilians have now been evacuated. In its daily update on the war in Ukraine on Tuesday, Britain's defense ministry said Russian forces have made only marginal progress in an attempt to encircle Avdiivka in recent days and had lost many armored vehicles and tanks. Again, this is the same rhetoric we've seen throughout the whole war. You know, the Russians are moving slowly, very slowly, incrementally, and they're losing a lot of casualties. And then weeks later, you know, we'll take a look at the map, and then we'll see, you know, these cities completely in red, which is going to be the situation here also. But anyways, they go on to say here, Russia's 10th Tank Regiment taking part in the Avdiivka operation was dogged by problems of ill discipline and poor morale and had likely lost a large portion of its tanks, the ministry said. In another sign of the pressure Moscow is facing, Russia said on Tuesday it had for the first time shot down a U.S.-supplied GLSDB guided smart bomb fired by Ukrainian forces. The ground-launched small-diameter bomb, long sought by Kyiv to hit Russian command centers and supply lines, could double Ukraine's battlefield firing range. Separately, Ukrainian forces reported repelling 62 Russian assaults along the eastern front over the past 24 hours. Tactical nuclear weapons. Russian President Vladimir Putin's invasion has been bogged down for months in eastern Ukraine. Okay, I think it's going to talk about here how Russia is going to be deploying nuclear weapons in Belarus, which could again be another hint that Russia will be launching another offensive on the capital of Ukraine, and they will have that as a sort of safeguard against any attempts by Ukraine or NATO in trying to invade or attack Belarus. But yeah, I covered that in another video, guys. Go check that out. Russia will be deploying nuclear weapons here inside of Belarus, or rather tactical nuclear weapons, which are, you know, nuclear weapons in a smaller scale. But yeah, as we can see here, guys, you know, Bakhmut here, again, every time we take a look at the map, the pocket grows smaller. And if you look at this, it's just ridiculous to look at these pro-Ukrainian maps and take what the West and what Ukraine is saying seriously, that the situation is stabilized. I mean, the situation is completely disastrous and chaotic for Ukraine right now. And believe me, once they admit that Bakhmut has fallen, everything is going to come crumbling down. But anyways, that's going to be it for this video, guys. Let me know your thoughts and comments down below. And remember, the truth is stranger than fiction. Have a wonderful day, and God bless.